Not a single member of my entire family came to my wedding. Not my father, not my mother, not my brother, not even any of my aunts or cousins. The 37 seats, marked with their names at the wedding venue, lay empty. 3 weeks after my wedding, my dad sent me a message asking for $8,700 for my brother's wedding. The same brother who never called me. Not even once. I sent him $1 on Venmo. The message said, "Good luck." My dad came to my house with 2 police officers and tried to break in. And then my husband changed the locks. And that's when I realized that the most dangerous thing I had done in my life was to admit that I deserved better. My name is Maya, and this is the story of how I went from being the invisible daughter to the woman my family never saw coming. Stay with me, because this is not just a revenge story. This is a survival story, and by the time I am done talking, you are going to understand exactly why I did every single thing I did. I want to start at the beginning, because you need to understand the full picture before you can understand the ending. I grew up in a house in suburban Ohio. Middle-class neighborhood. Nice enough yard. 2 cars in the driveway. From the outside, we looked like every other family on the block. Dad went to work. Mom stayed home for most of my childhood. My brother Tyler was 2 years older than me. And from the time I was old enough to notice anything at all, I noticed that Tyler and I were not treated the same way. It was not dramatic at first. It was quiet. The kind of unfairness that does not announce itself. It just sits there in the background of your entire childhood, like a smell you get so used to. You stop noticing it until one day, a stranger walks into your house and makes a face. Tyler got the bigger bedroom. Tyler got the newer bike. Tyler's baseball games were circled on the family calendar in red marker like national holidays. My track meets were things my parents sometimes remembered to ask about on the drive home from Tyler's baseball games. Not because they attended mine. They usually didn't. But because it was convenient conversation. I was a good student. Better than Tyler, honestly. I got a 3.9 GPA all through high school. Tyler barely passed junior year, and my dad hired him a tutor and threw a dinner party when he graduated. When I graduated with honors, my mom took a photo on her phone and said, "That's great, sweetie," and then asked if I could help set up for Tyler's graduation party the following weekend. I know some of you listening right now are nodding, because you have lived this. The second child thing, the daughter thing, the kid who does everything right and somehow still ends up invisible. And I want you to know I see you. And this story is for you too. I told myself for a long time that it wasn't that bad. I told myself families just have different dynamics. I told myself Tyler was the firstborn, and that's just how it goes sometimes. I made excuses for years, and every time I made an excuse, I handed my family a little more permission to keep doing what they were doing. When I was 17, I started working part-time at a coffee shop downtown, not because I had to. We weren't struggling financially. I did it because I wanted my own money. I wanted something that was mine, something my parents couldn't take credit for, and couldn't overshadow with something Tyler did. That job was mine. The tips were mine. The regulars who learned my name and my schedule were mine. And quietly, without really planning it, I started saving. By the time I left for college, I had almost $4,000 in a savings account my parents didn't know about. That account was the first foundation of the life I eventually built without them. I got into a good school, not Ivy League, but a solid state university with a strong business program. I got a partial scholarship based on my grades. I applied for it myself, filled out every form, wrote every essay. My parents signed the financial forms because they had to. And my dad complained about the tuition cost for the entire drive to campus on move-in day. Tyler had gone to community college 2 years before me. My parents paid his full tuition and bought him a car so he could commute. When I asked about help with my remaining tuition balance, my dad said, "You should get a job on campus. Maya, we're not made of money." I got 2 jobs on campus. I am not saying this for sympathy. I genuinely believe those 2 jobs changed my life for the better. One was at the university library, and the other was doing admin work for the business school. The business school job is where I met Professor Sandra Cho. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately became the most important person in it without trying. She ran the entrepreneurship program, and she had built and sold 2 companies before she turned 40. Professor Cho noticed me because I was always early, always organized, and apparently I had this habit of quietly fixing problems before anyone asked me to. She told me that later. She said, "Maya, I hired you as a receptionist, but you were acting like an operations manager from day one. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just saw things that needed fixing, and I fixed them. By my sophomore year, she had me helping coordinate the student business pitch competition. By junior year, I was essentially co-running it. By senior year, she wrote me a recommendation letter that I still have framed in my office today. Back home, Tyler had dropped out of community college. He was working at my uncle's auto shop. My parents acted like this was a perfectly reasonable life path. And maybe it was. I have no judgment for trade work. But when I came home for Christmas junior year and mentioned I was thinking about going to grad school for my MBA, my dad literally laughed. Not a warm laugh. The kind of laugh that means, who do you think you are? He said, Maya, you have a business degree. What more education do you need? Just go get a job. Somewhere. My mom nodded along the way. She always nodded along. And Tyler, who was sitting on the couch eating chips and watching football, said, yeah, don't be a professional student, without even looking up. I drove back to campus 2 days earlier and did not go home for spring break that year. I met Daniel the summer before my senior year at a friend's backyard cookout. He was standing by the grill, looking slightly lost, because he had just moved to the city for work and didn't know many people yet. My friend Jordan introduced us, and we talked for 3 hours straight. When I finally looked at my phone, it was midnight, and I had 4 texts from Jordan, asking where I disappeared to. Daniel was the kind of person who actually listened when you talked, not the kind of listening where someone is just waiting for their turn to speak. Real listening. He would remember details from conversations weeks later and ask follow-up questions. It sounds small, but when you have grown up in a family where you are background noise, that kind of attention feels like the loudest thing in the world. He was also funny, quietly funny in the way that sneaks up on you, and he was steady, consistent. He called when he said he would call, and showed up when he said he would show up. These should be basic requirements for any human being. But after a lifetime of being deprioritized by my own family, I had set my bar so low that a man who did what he said he would do felt like something rare. We dated for almost 2 years before he proposed. By then, I had graduated, gotten my first real job at a consulting firm, and was already being fast-tracked for a promotion I had not technically been eligible for yet. Daniel had a stable career in logistics management. We were both building something real. When he proposed, I cried for about 40 minutes, and then immediately started worrying about telling my family, which tells you everything you need to know about the state of that relationship. I called my mom first. She seemed happy, asked about the ring, asked about Daniel's job. It felt okay. Then she said, have you told your father yet? And the way she said it, that pause before father, like there was something coming I should brace for. I called my dad that evening. He congratulated me in the same tone he would use to acknowledge a minor weather update. Then he asked if Daniel's family had money. Not as a joke, a real question. I told him Daniel's family was comfortable and that we were both doing well. He said, well, that's good, I guess. And then mentioned that Tyler was thinking about proposing to his girlfriend, Brittany, soon, and that it would probably be a big production. I hung up and told Daniel I needed a walk. He handed me my jacket without asking any questions. Daniel and I got engaged in October. We planned to get married the following September. That gave us about 11 months to plan everything. I want to walk you through those 11 months, because what happened during that time is what made the wedding day what it was. It didn't start with one big dramatic moment. It started with 100 small ones. We decided on a venue first, a beautiful restored barn about 40 minutes outside the city. It held about 90 people, which was perfect for what we wanted. Not a massive blowout wedding. Intimate, personal, real. Called my mom to tell her about the venue, and she immediately said, well, Tyler and Brittany are looking at venues too, and there's a really beautiful country club in Westfield. I asked what that had to do with our venue. She got quiet and then said, I just want to make sure the venues don't conflict. I told her our date was set, and she could pass it along. She said she would. 2 weeks later, Tyler announced his engagement to Brittany. His wedding date was set for 4 months after ours. My mom called me to tell me like it was news I needed to react to, with equal celebration. I said, that's great, I hope they're happy. She seemed disappointed by my measured response. Over the next few months, I noticed a pattern developing. Every wedding conversation I tried to have with my mom eventually turned into a Tyler and Brittany conversation. She would start off engaged with my plans, and then somehow, within 10 minutes, we would be talking about Brittany's dress preferences, or Tyler's venue tour, or what my dad thought the guest count should be for Tyler's wedding. I started keeping notes, not because I was planning anything at the time. I just needed somewhere to put the frustration that had nowhere else to go. By March, I had invited both my parents, and Tyler, and Brittany, to a wedding planning dinner at our house. I made food. Daniel set the table. We had a whole evening planned to go over seating charts, the ceremony details, what roles we wanted family members to play. My dad cancelled 2 hours before, with a text that said, "Something came up." Tyler never responded to the invitation at all. My mom showed up 40 minutes late and spent most of the dinner on her phone, because apparently, Brittany had texted her a link to potential wedding florists she wanted her opinion on. I cleared the table that night while Daniel quietly washed dishes, and neither of us said anything for a long time. He finally said, "Maya, we don't have to keep doing this." I said, "I know, but I wasn't ready to stop trying yet. I thought if I just kept reaching, maybe eventually someone would reach back." I sent formal invitations out in May. Beautiful invitations. Cream cardstock with simple gold lettering. Return envelope included. 3 weeks to respond. My parents received theirs. Tyler and Brittany received theirs. I know they arrived because I used a mail tracking service, and I saw the confirmed delivery dates. The RSVP deadline came. Nothing from my parents. Nothing from Tyler. Nothing from my aunt on my dad's side, who I had specifically reached out to separately because I genuinely liked her. Nothing from my cousins. I gave it an extra week thinking maybe the mail response cards got lost. So I texted everyone directly and asked for a response. My mom texted back 3 days later and said, "We need to talk about some schedule conflicts." I called her. She told me that Tyler and Brittany had moved up some pre-wedding events to the same month as my wedding, and that the family had a lot of commitments coming up. I asked her directly, "Are you coming to my wedding?" She said, "Maya, don't make this into something." That sentence. Don't make this into something. As if me asking whether my own mother planned to attend my wedding was the dramatic choice. I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store, and I cried for about 15 minutes. And then I did something I had never done before in my life. When it came to my family, I made a decision. I decided I was going to move forward as if they weren't coming. Not as punishment, not as a power move, as self-protection. I was not going to hold space for people who couldn't be bothered to RSVP to my wedding. I called our venue coordinator, moved some table arrangements, and asked Daniel's family if any of his cousins wanted to fill a few seats we had opened up. They said yes immediately, and showed up with a casserole the week before the wedding, just to check in on us. That was the difference. That contrast right there. That is what I want you to sit with. September 14th. I woke up at 6 in the morning in the hotel suite I shared with my 3 best friends the night before. My maid of honor, Priya, was already awake and had ordered room service coffee, and was sitting on the windowsill, watching the city below. When I sat down next to her, she handed me a cup without saying anything, and we just sat there, watching the early morning light for a while. She knew what I was feeling. I had told her everything. She didn't try to fix it or reframe it. She just sat with me in it. And that quiet solidarity meant more than any pep talk could have. The day itself was honestly beautiful. I am not going to pretend it wasn't because the pain around it shouldn't erase what was genuinely wonderful about it. The venue was golden in the afternoon light. The flowers were exactly what I had imagined. Daniel cried when I walked down the aisle, which made Priya cry, which made Daniel's mom cry, which made Daniel laugh through his tears. And honestly, that laugh is still one of my favorite sounds in the world. There were 47 empty seats. I had not removed the name cards because honestly, there wasn't time in the final setup chaos, and I think part of me still held a small ridiculous hope that someone would show up. Nobody showed up. Danielle's family filled the space with warmth. His parents danced. His cousins made toasts. His aunt pulled me aside during cocktail hour and held both my hands and looked me in the eye and said, "You are extraordinary, and we are so glad you're ours now." I held it together until she walked away, and then I excused myself to the bathroom for 2 minutes. We danced until 10. We ate, we laughed, we got married, and somewhere across the city, my family was living their lives as if none of it was happening. The weeks after the wedding had their own particular texture. Danielle and I came back from our honeymoon in Costa Rica, sunburned and laughing, and more settled in each other than we had ever been. There is something about choosing someone in front of people and then surviving the weight of what that day cost. Emotionally, that binds you in a different way. We were solid. We were good. But the silence from my family was loud in its own way. No calls, no texts, no belated congratulations, not even a card that arrived late in the mail. Nothing. It was as if the wedding had happened in a parallel universe that they had chosen not to visit. I didn't reach out either. For the first time in my adult life, I was not the one trying to bridge the gap, and the stillness that came from stopping that reaching was uncomfortable at first, like removing a splinter that has been there so long, you forgot it wasn't part of you. I had been carrying the labor of that family relationship, almost entirely by myself, for years. The calls, the visits, the effort to include people who responded with mild inconvenience. When I asked for basic acknowledgement, and when I stopped carrying it, the relationship simply did not continue. Because I had been the only one holding it up, that realization settled into me slowly. Over those first post-wedding weeks, it wasn't an angry realization. It was almost peaceful, like finally understanding the rules of a game you have been losing for years, and realizing the game was rigged from the start, and you can just walk away from the table. I focused on work. I had just gotten the promotion I mentioned, Director of Client Strategy at the consulting firm, youngest person in the company to hold that title. My salary had nearly doubled from my starting position 3 years earlier. Daniel and I were talking seriously about buying a house. Life was genuinely moving and building, and I was present for all of it, in a way I couldn't have been if I was still pouring energy into a family that never reciprocated. And then 3 weeks after our wedding, my phone lit up with a text from my dad. I want to read you this text because I saved it. I saved all of them. It said, Maya, Tyler, and Brittany have locked in their wedding date, and we need to get the family contribution together. We're asking everyone to pitch in. Your share is $8,400. Can you send it to my account this week? This is important for the family. That was it. No congratulations on my wedding. No acknowledgement that 3 weeks earlier, I had gotten married without a single family member present. No preamble. No softening. Just a financial demand delivered, like I was a vendor being invoiced. I stared at it for a long time. Daniel walked in from the kitchen, saw my face, and said, "What happened?" I showed him the phone. He read it twice. He set the phone down on the coffee table, very carefully, the way you set something down when you want to be deliberate about not throwing it. Then he looked at me and said, "What do you want to do?" I love that he asked that. Not, "What should we do?" Not, "Here's what I think." What do you want to do? He understood it was my call. I thought about it for 2 days. I went back and forth. Part of me wanted to write a long response, to lay out everything, to make him see, to explain what the empty chairs meant, and what his absence cost me, and what it felt like to receive a financial request from a man who couldn't be bothered to watch his daughter get married. But I had spent my whole life trying to make my family see, and they had never seen, not because they were incapable of it, but because they had chosen not to. There is a difference, and it matters. So I opened Venmo. I sent my father $1. In the memo field, I typed, "Best wishes." I put the phone down and made dinner. He called within 20 minutes of the Venmo notification hitting his phone. I did not answer. He called again. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. I will not play it for you, but I will tell you what it contained. It contained language I will not repeat. It contained accusations that I was selfish and ungrateful, and that I had always been difficult. It contained a statement that I clearly didn't care about this family, which struck me as an interesting complaint from a man who had just demonstrated the precise opposite of caring about this family 3 weeks earlier. He texted after the voicemail. Multiple text. I saved those too. The text said things like, "You think this is funny," and "Your brother deserves a real wedding just like everyone else," and "After everything we've done for you," which is a sentence I want to pause on for a moment, because it is a sentence that does a very specific thing. "After everything we've done for you" is a phrase designed to make you feel like you owe someone something, without ever specifying what that something is. It is deliberately vague, because if it were specific, you could examine it. You could say, "Let's look at that list," but vague debt is harder to argue with. It just sits there, making you feel like a bad person. I had heard that phrase my entire childhood. After everything we've done for you. After everything. What was the everything? A roof and food, which are the legal minimum requirements of having a child. The occasional birthday present that was always slightly less than what Tyler got. I had paid my own way through most of college. I had never asked them for money as an adult. I had called regularly for years, even when the calls were one-sided. I had shown up to Tyler's events. I had sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts and remembered anniversaries. What exactly was the everything? I did not respond to any of the calls or texts, not because I was playing a game, because I had made a decision about what I was willing to carry, and I was holding that decision. My mom called the next morning. Her voice was different, quieter. I almost answered it. But I thought about the planning dinner, where she sat on her phone, looking at Brittany's florists. I thought about, don't make this into something. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was softer than my dad's, but it had the same architecture. It started with, Maya honey, and ended with, your father is really upset, and I think you should call him and apologize. Apologize. For sending $1 in response to an $8,000 request, made without an apology for missing my wedding, I showed Daniel. He made a sound that was not quite a word. Chapter 10. Changing the locks. Here is the thing about the locks that I want you to understand. It was not a dramatic, impulsive decision. It was a practical one that I had been thinking about for a few days. My parents had a spare key to our apartment. They had gotten it 2 years earlier, when Daniel and I first moved in together. At the time, I thought it was reasonable. In case of emergency, my parents lived about an hour away, and having a key felt like a safety net. But after the texts and the voicemail, I started thinking about that key differently. I had a feeling things were escalating. My dad has a temper. I had seen it my whole childhood. Not violent, but loud and physical, in the way some men get when they feel like they're losing control of a situation. He paces. He raises his voice. He shows up. I told Daniel I wanted to change the locks. He said, already looked up a locksmith, and showed me 3 options on his phone. We booked one for the following morning. The locksmith came at 9. New locks on both the front door and the back door that led to our small patio. New keys cut. Old ones rendered useless. That afternoon, my dad showed up at our building. He buzzed from the lobby. I saw it on the intercom camera. I did not buzz him in. He buzzed 3 more times. Then he left. An hour later, he was back. This time with 2 police officers. I want to be really clear about what happened here, because I know it sounds extreme. My dad called the police and told them that his daughter had cut off contact with him and that he was concerned about her welfare. This is a tactic. I did not know it had a name at the time, but I learned later that it is called a wellness check, and that it can be used as a form of harassment when someone cuts off contact with a family member who does not want to accept that boundary. The officers were professional. They were not aggressive. They came to the door and knocked, and I opened it because I was not going to hide in my own home and because I had done nothing wrong, and I wanted to be completely clear about that. One officer explained that they had received a call expressing concern for my safety. I told them I was fine. They could see I was fine. I was standing in my own home, wearing work clothes, and holding a mug of coffee. Daniel was visible behind me at the kitchen counter. The apartment was calm and normal. The officer asked if I knew why my father might have concerns. I said, because I didn't answer his phone calls after he missed my wedding, and I sent him $1 instead of $8,000 for my brother's wedding. There was a pause. The officers looked at each other briefly. The second one asked if I wanted them to relay anything to my father, who was apparently waiting outside. I said, please tell him I am fine, and that I would appreciate space at this time. They said they would. They were polite. They left. I watched through the window as they spoke to my dad outside. I could not hear the conversation, but I could see my dad's body language. He was gesturing. He was frustrated. At one point, he pointed at our building, and one of the officers shook his head slightly and said something, and my dad went still. They left together. My dad sat in his car for about 10 minutes. Then he drove away. I sat down on the couch. Daniel sat next to me. We did not speak for a while. Then he said, are you okay? I said, I think I just got free. Chapter 12. What I did next, and why I'm going to tell you what I did over the next 30 days, because it matters and because it is the part of the story that people always want to skip to, but cannot understand without everything that came before it. First, I contacted a family law attorney, not because I thought I needed legal protection in a formal sense, but because I wanted to understand my rights and my options. The attorney was a woman named Rachel, and she was exactly as calm and precise as you want an attorney to be. She explained that my father had every right to request a wellness check, but that it could not be used repeatedly as a tool of harassment without consequence. She helped me document the timeline. The missed wedding, the financial request, the texts, the voicemail, the wellness check, all of it in writing with dates. She said, Maya, you are not doing anything wrong, but documentation is your friend. I took that seriously. Second, I reached out to my aunt on my dad's side, the one who had not RSVP'd to my wedding. I had mixed feelings about this because I had genuinely liked her growing up, but I needed to understand what was being said about me within the family. I called her and kept it simple. I said, I just want you to know my side of things, if you're interested in hearing it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Maya, I owe you an apology. I should have been at your wedding and I wasn't, and I have been feeling terrible about it. I was not expecting that." We talked for almost 2 hours. She told me that there had been family pressure from my dad to not make a big deal of my wedding because Tyler's was coming up and he didn't want the events to compete. She used that word, compete. My own father had framed my wedding as competition. Third, I started thinking about a conversation I had been avoiding. A direct conversation with my parents, where I said clearly and calmly what I needed to say. Not to fix things, not to repair the relationship, just to close a chapter cleanly, so I could move forward without dragging it behind me. I called my parents on a Sunday evening, about 3 weeks after the cop incident. I called them together. A 3-way call. I asked my mum to be on the line too, because I was tired of messages being filtered through her. My dad picked up already defensive. His first words were, "So you finally decided to call?" I said, "Yes, I did," and I kept my voice completely flat, not cold, flat, neutral, like a weather report. I said what I had prepared to say. I told them I was not calling to argue, or to rehash, or to assign blame. I was calling to say a few things clearly, and then I was going to hang up, and they could do whatever they wanted with what I said. I said, "You did not come to my wedding." I had 47 empty seats with family names on them. I have never once in my adult life asked this family for financial help. 3 weeks after my wedding, I received a request for over $8,000, as though nothing had happened. I responded the way I felt was appropriate. I am not going to apologize for that. My dad started to interrupt. I kept going. I said, "I have spent my entire life being the daughter who made herself smaller, so there was more room for everyone else. I am done doing that. I wish Tyler and Brittany a genuinely happy marriage. I hope the wedding is beautiful, but I am not contributing to it financially, and I am not accepting being treated as a problem to be managed when it is convenient and ignored when it is not." My mom said, "Maya, please." I said, "Mom, I love you, but I need you to understand that staying silent while this happened was also a choice." Then I said, "I am building a good life. I am happy. I would welcome a real relationship with this family if everyone in it is willing to treat me as an equal member of it. But I am not available for anything less than that anymore." My dad said something sharp and angry. I said, "I hope you have a good evening," and ended the call. I sat with the phone in my hands for a minute. Daniel was in the doorway of the room watching me. I said, "Done." He said, "Come eat dinner." And we did. I want to take you through the next several months, because the story does not end with the phone call. Real life does not work that way. There were ripple effects and unexpected moments, and things I had to reckon with that I did not anticipate. My aunt became something of an unexpected ally. After our long phone call, she quietly reached out to a few other relatives, and apparently shared enough of the real story that the family narrative my dad had been constructing, the one where I was the ungrateful, selfish daughter, started to crack a little. I did not ask her to do this. She did it because she had her own feelings about how I had been treated for years. She told me once, "I watched this happen your whole childhood." Maya and I told myself it wasn't my place. I should have made it my place. Tyler's wedding happened in January. I was not invited. I would not have gone if I had been. From what my aunt told me afterward, it was a large, expensive event, and my dad had taken out a small personal loan to cover part of it. I am not saying that with any satisfaction. I am saying it because the financial ask made to me was part of a larger pattern of my family, treating Tyler's milestones as community events that everyone was expected to fund and treat mine as personal business. I handled alone, Daniel, and I bought our house in February. 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood we love. We closed on a Thursday morning and stood in the empty living room, eating sandwiches off the floor because we didn't have furniture in yet, and we were too happy to wait for a proper table setting. It was one of the best days of my life, and I shared it with the people who had earned the right to be there for my good days. My mom called in March, not my dad, just my mom. She called to say she had been thinking. She called to say she knew things had gone wrong and that she bore some responsibility for that. It was not a perfect conversation. She did not say everything I needed her to say, but she said more than she ever had before, and she said it without my dad coaching it, or my brothers' interests framing it. I told her I was willing to have a relationship with her if she was willing to have one that was honest. She said she wanted to try. We have been trying, slowly, with a lot of pauses, but genuinely. My dad has not called since the Sunday phone call. I have not called him either. I leave that door neither open nor closed. I leave it the way he has left so many things in my life, present but unaddressed. And here is the part that I want to end on, because I think it is the most important thing I can tell you. The revenge in this story was not the dollar I sent on Venmo. That was satisfying in the moment, but it was not the point. The real revenge was building a life so full and so solid that there was no room in it for people who had only ever made me smaller. The real revenge was the house, and the promotion, and the marriage, and the friendships that held me up on my wedding day when my family left 47 empty chairs. The real revenge was becoming someone who no longer needed their approval to know her own worth. And I promise you, if you are listening to this and you recognize yourself in this story, whether you are the invisible daughter, or the second child, or the one who always calls first, or the one who planned everything alone, you do not need their permission to stop. You do not need a dramatic moment. You do not need them to admit what they did. You just need to decide that you are worth more than the role they assigned you, and then live like it is true, because it is. My name is Maya. I changed my own locks, and I am not going back.